The shop clerk, whom they later piece together, goes by the name Bobcat, takes a long pull of a vape inhaler and breathes out a nearly completely opaque cloud of vapor that smells of ripe raspberries. The air in the small shop front has a smell of disinfectant, fake leather, and perhaps a hint of gasoline. The cloud slowly dissipates but leaves a lingering hint of the acrid nicotine base of the vape. The man looks up and down at the two journalists, then presses a button that locks the front door, mumbling something about "gotta keep them
neighbors
out." He then walks past them, giving a slight nod indicating "follow me." They walk behind the counter and the clerk pushes open a false wall. The opening leads deeper into the building, and the low sound of rock music emanates from within. After a second of confusion, a series of excuse me are heard as the two reporters push past the man in this small space. The hallway is short, perhaps 15 feet, and there at the end, the glow of red neon lights flickers slightly. The shopkeeper shuts the door behind them, the thump and clack of the locking system giving an assurance that there is no turning back. Judy walks behind Richard towards the music. She is considerably frightened and reaches for Richard's hand, but then in a moment of hesitation grabs the man by the elbow. Richard turns to look with an expression that seems to indicate a shared distraught emotional state, and with not quite terrified but definitely cautious gait, they make their way to the back room. The place is a small clubhouse, with chairs and tables fitting an out-of-style nightclub. A bar runs along the back wall, and an unoccupied stripper pole on a platform tells a sad and unfulfilling story. There are about 15 people here, of various sizes and shapes, but not colors of skin. All here are white, and all are men. The place is clean, although the floor has hints of stickiness, more likely caused by frequent waxing than spilled drinks. The reporters just stand there, almost dumbstruck by the unexpected sight. In their collective imaginations they had managed to establish expectations several levels of decrepitness worse, both expecting some kind of horror movie ending. The mind goes to weird places when seas of panic are sown. A large man, both in length and girth, stands up from the nearest table and approaches them, crossing his arms. He tilts his head inquisitively, but says nothing. Richard mentions Jack by name and the big man chuckles and smiles.
"He said someone was coming. Jack is that one near the motorcycle at the end of the bar,"
he says, pointing at a thin, tattooed man in a loose t-shirt and tattered jeans. Jack, the younger of the two Goodman brothers, sits at the bar nursing a bottle of Coca-Cola. There's a single empty shot glass on the counter next to him, and it looks like there have not been many others before it. Richard gestures for Judy to get the recorder out as they walk over to the bar. When Judy pulls the recorder from her equipment bag, the whole clubhouse goes silent. Only the music continues in the background. There is a murmur in the crowd, and the word "police" can be heard. "They ain't cops," says Jack, bringing the bottle to his lips. Takes a swig and continues. "Them's the reporters John's been talking about." And with just his word, the rest of the clubhouse calms down. The reporters ask Jack about the supposed murder of Nolan Lewis. The man turns on the swiveling bar stool to face them and the microphone. "Is this what this is all about? I thought you guys were here to make a documentary about John." The reporters agree that yes, that is what this is rapidly turning into, but insist on talking about the case first. "Yeah, well, that's what Jackson was bragging about, doing the deed and getting away with it. He was twitching all kinds of crazy. Must have been on all kinds of soy sauce." The reporters have him go over the encounter to get it on tape. Sometime back, in front of a franchise pizza restaurant, Jackson Pierce was bragging about kicking a man to death. Jack tells the story, short as it is, and as he finishes, the giant of a man who accosted them earlier comes up to the bar to get another beer. "Tony, you were there, right?"
"What's this now?"
"You were at the King's Pizza that night Pierce killed that man, right?"
"I think so, yeah. It didn't happen there, though."
"Yeah, right. No, it didn't. Where was that wash party that night? At old Carrick's place, or?" The men go into some sort of a bit, listing several abandoned properties around the town. "Dawson's?"
"Nah, it burned down last year."
"Clarkson's?"
"No, the police took it in January."
You get the picture. Tony grabs his beer and turns to say,
"Why don't you just ask him?"
Jack nods and the big man walks away to talk to his buddies. "Ask who?" Judy wonders aloud. "Jackson Pierce, of course. He ought to remember best. I could give him a call. He'd probably come running and tell you himself. I got his number," Jack says, swinging around in his bar stool. No. Richard says, clapping his notebook shut to emphasize Judy's not quite as dismissive, more disbelieving. You mean we stick a microphone to his face and he confesses on tape to a murder? That makes no sense.
Fudge.
Yeah, he'd do it. He's a wraith, a tweaker. He's all kinds of gone. And he's got that get out of jail free card. Being appears, Richard mutters almost inaudibly. Yeah, you got him right, Jack says and empties his bottle. You know, I'm gonna head down the well now. I'm going to write down this number anyway, he says and scribbles down the digits he's been looking up from his phone. If you're really here to make a radio thing out of Jon though, maybe you ought to talk with some of the folks here. He gestures around the herd of self-proclaimed black sheep in the clubhouse. Tyler and I are gonna be at Jon's tonight. Talk to us after you've had a word around town. What's happening at Jon's? Judy asks. We're going to cast a ramp in the pool.
Fudge.
My bag is going to kill me tomorrow, but as they say, you don't look into the gift horse mouth. And with that he steps from the bar stool and heads out the back door. Looking around, the reporters feel marooned. But this is what they do, talk to people. They push through the confusion. The large man, Tony, sees them approaching and pushes out a chair for them. It turns out that folks around these bars mostly go with brutal honesty instead of being cagey about, well, basically anything. Tony wears a shirt that says, I'm so
Fudge.
fat I don't even care anymore. Later in the conversation he lifts his shirt to show giant words, Feed Me, tattooed with gothic letters across his stomach. After a few initial questions, everything seems to fall into place. Instead of a series of single-person interviews, the situation evolves into a kind of town hall meeting, free for all. The stories about the mysterious Jon Lemure start pouring in, how he always talks about climate change, how he thinks everyone is a failure, and the thing that comes up time after time is how loaded he must be. Everyone here seems to think he must be a millionaire. And the stories they tell, one after another, are meant to back this claim up by explaining how brutishly and stingily he lives. Apparently, Jon has made a killing in the clock repair trade, and there are even whispers of treasures still hidden in the buried mine. For some, the treasure is Civil War-era gold. For others, it's Jon's earnings or his grandfather's money. They all seem to agree, though, Jon is not poor, not even close. I wonder why he lives like that, poor like a street rat, says one man, who proudly explained earlier that he's had the same hat for 7 years, and judging by his body odor, he isn't too fond of changing other articles of clothing either. You know, he's taken all his money out of the banks, uses only cash. That's how you know he's loaded, when he don't trust the banks and the government to keep his money, says one man who seems to have an encyclopedic level of knowledge of various white power organizations. One man, a trucker by trade and among the oldest present here today, knows to educate the reporters about Jon. His grandfather, old Miss Mary's father, was a judge and a wealthy one at that. Apparently some of that inheritance ended up ballooning like crazy at the stock market in the late 80s. The owner of the motorcycle parked inside the clubhouse, a burly biker named Baba, knows that by the latter part of the 90s Jon was fixing clocks for some real money. So the rumors get passed around, each one has a different version of the truth, and it doesn't matter who is right and who is wrong, what is true, what isn't. It all brings together a picture that is much, much larger than the reporters have been able to piece together during their research. The fact that Jon doesn't keep his money in a bank does in a way explain how it was difficult to find pretty much anything about him on the internet. Time flies, and 3-4 hours fly by. Some folks are getting drunk and are tired of talking to the reporters, and the mob just mostly fades away. But Bobcat, the tattoo artist from the store side of this establishment, who has now closed down the shop for the night and joined them in the back room, now sits at the table with the reporters. Anyway, you know Jon hates tattoos, right? The reporters nod during the phone call. His disrespect for that particular art has been well established. Bobcat leans in like a witness at a congressional hearing and whispers to the microphone, "Have you seen his tattoos?" The story, as Bobcat tells it, goes like this. One afternoon about a year ago, Jon came to the shop and wanted a tattoo and paid handsomely for it, and came back the next week for another. At that time, Bobcat was sure that the man was going crazy. But since he was not acting any crazier than usual, he started inking the man. Apparently, Jon dropped around $3,000 on the tattoos that summer before. Before the reporters even get to ask, he goes on to theorize on the reasons for doing so. He and Tyler Goodman own this place, not 50-50, but he doesn't go into details. You see, last year we had some issues with the tax man, and so bills started building up, he says, looking down into his beer bottle like staring down the barrel of a gun. Whenever we were getting close to trouble at this place, what do you know? There's the world's biggest tattoo hater ready for another round of pain. He did it to help you out, Richard asked, just to get the man to say it on tape. I think so now. He keeps a ledger and always asks questions about money. So if anyone would know we're having trouble, he would be it. So he comes for another tattoo like clockwork just when we need the cash. If it weren't for Jon, we'd have gone under, the man says and leans back. He really loves those boys, Tyler and Jack. He's always having them come over and work on the property, doing odd jobs. He loves them like they were his own, I say. And with that, the man stumbles up and shuffles over to the bar to get another bottle. The reporters have recorded over 4 hours of material here, and the restless night before is starting to come collecting. They pack up their equipment and wave their goodbyes, and Bobcat shows them out the back door. Open air after the hours spent inside feels good and clears the head. Hammond and Barkley walk through the small alleyway between buildings to the side street where they parked the rental car. In the car, a sudden silence strikes. Judy looks at Richard, who is just staring through the windshield for a few seconds. The older man sighs, shakes his head, and turns on the engine.
Fudge.
Me, is all he says as they drive off. Wordlessly, they head to the Lemure estate, driving in silence. It is clear to both that what they now need is to get a microphone in front of Tyler, and then Jon. Richard parks the Prius to within an inch of where it stood yesterday. The colors of the surrounding flowers somehow make his mood even worse. He can't seem to pinpoint the source of his dismay. Something is making undirected anger bubble out from deep within. He wipes his eyes. He must be getting dehydrated. He has to blink a couple of times to get moisture on his eyeballs. His vision feels like looking through a thin layer of fabric or a screen door. He takes a bottle of water and downs half of it in one go. Old man, he thinks to himself, you gotta take care of yourself. When they arrive in this world of color behind the willows, they find 3 men just finished casting the cement for the ramp to the drained dog pool. The 2 brothers, Jack and Tyler, are shirtless and sweating in the warm evening sun, but Mr. Lemure is still fully clothed with his flannel shirt buttoned up and sleeves down. Judy makes the conclusion that if Bobcat's tale was true, the man is hiding his skin. It's baffling to her that someone would rather do something that they consider so unbecoming to themselves instead of just helping out openly. She will never understand masculine pride, she concludes, and gets out of the car when it stops. They greet the 3 men and stand there at the edge of the drained pool. A moment of silence is broken when an old and graying Dachshund steps to the edge of the pool and barks once in a low and restrained manner. The 3 men burst out laughing. The reporters are not in on the joke before Tyler manages to utter "fit for a king" in between bursts of laughter. The old and dignified Dachshund, appropriately named King, is one of the dogs whom the stairs and ramp is being built for. This moment of laughter seems like a good place to leave our reporters this week. For after joy, often sorrow follows. Better leave that for the next week's episode. World Machine is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents either are the products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events or locales or even persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental, and we don't yet know if King approves.